It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them, so thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today, my guest is Brad Wolansky, CEO at Dover Saddlery, the largest multi-channel retailer of equestrian products in the United States. Brad brings a wealth of leadership and experience to the business, and beyond his 30 years in retail, his strengths in operational excellence, omnichannel marketing, and product development, coupled with his passion and drive to put the customer first, establishes him as a strong leader and mentor for growing brands. Prior to being appointed Dover Saddlery's CEO, Brad has held executive and management positions at Performance Sports Group, Yankee Candle, the Orvis Company, Wilson's Leather, and LL Bean. He started his career running a family-owned group of luggage and gift stores after achieving his bachelor's degree in rhetoric at Bates College. Brad Wolansky, welcome into the corner office.
Thanks, Brant.
Great to have you here. And gosh, it's kind of a colder fall day now in New England. I'm down the coast from you in New Haven, and boy, it's nothing like clockwork in this part of the world, right? September 22nd comes around, and we get a big rainstorm in, and all of a sudden it's 60 degrees from the 80 degrees it's been. How is it up where you are today?
There you go. That's what you get in New England.
Yeah, well, I was telling a friend on the West Coast earlier today, that's why I like the seasons. Having grown up in the Southwest and never really been, in much of the seasonal effort, you just have to be ready for it when it comes. But it's never too early. It's always it's too soon. So
that's right. Get out the snow shovel.
Get out the snow shovels. Get it all ready. Well, that's a good place for us to start. Tell us a little bit about your early life. Where did you grow up, and your nuclear family? Where did you originally come from?
Well, I was raised in central New Jersey. My dad worked for most of the career that I was alive in Staten Island, which is a suburb of New York City.
Yeah.
And he would commute over the Goethals Bridge to Staten Island, where he ran a luggage and leather goods business that he took over from my grandfather.
I see a theme here. Brothers and sisters?
3 brothers. I'm the youngest.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Mom worked in the home. Was she raising all 4 of you boys pretty much full time, or did she also work outside of the home?
That's right. No, she did that as her full-time job, and it was a full-time job.
I can imagine. Are you guys all just a couple of years apart?
Well, I'm the youngest by several years.
Okay.
My other brothers are a little tighter. My oldest brother is 10 years older than I am.
Oh, right. I share that with you. I have an older 10 and an older 7-year brother, and then I'm the caboose. I'm the third one. That's further along.
There you go.
And you mentioned Dad had his own business. Was he an entrepreneur? Did he get that business started? Did he work for someone else? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, actually, my dad was an optometrist by training,
right.
And he got bored, so to speak, and my grandfather had some failing health, and so my dad went into the family business at that point. This was in the late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah.
And so he was a Dr. Wolansky to start with,
okay.
And he ended up in retail. And one of my other brothers also ended up in retail, and 2 of my other brothers didn't. But we all worked in the business during the peak seasons.
Yeah, right. Sure. As soon as you could probably clean a shelf room or stock in the back, or what kind of things did you do early on
Well,
when you got started retail?
well, actually, we sold a lot of gifts, luggage, and leather goods. And
Right.
one of my earliest memories that I like to tell people about is my grandfather handing me a wallet and saying, "Run this back to the back room and get it monogrammed, and hurry up, the lady's waiting."
Wow. And you do the monogramming yourself?
We did, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
all my
Awesome.
brothers learned how to do it. We
Yeah.
monogrammed small leather goods, wallets, and we had what we called a school bag business. My
Mm.
dad had arrangements with all of the private schools on Staten Island to imprint in gold lettering the
Wow.
student's name and the name of the school on these school bags that we manufactured.
Cool.
And it was quite the lucrative contract for a while.
Yeah,
So
I
we
can
all
imagine.
learned how to do that.
Yeah. Excellent. Were you a good student in school yourself?
Yeah, I was okay. Uh,
Things you like to do.
not triple A's, so to speak.
Right. Right.
But I made my way through, and I wasn't too much trouble. I'd like to think.
What about other activities? Sports, music, theater?
I was mainly into theater and
Yeah.
photography early on,
Cool.
and
Cool.
did some theater in college. But in high school, it was mainly photography, I would say.
Yeah. Cool. What about entrepreneurial activities? Were had the paper route or other things that you did, or did the retail store pretty much
Yeah.
suck up most of your time?
Yeah, I can't point to a lot of things
Yeah.
in my high school days, although once I got into college, I think that started to become more apparent.
Did you like retail early on?
Um, we all kind of liked being part of the store,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
liked being able to contribute. And I think
Right.
as kids, it felt good to be part of how we all
Yeah.
made money and how we
Right.
supported the business. And
Right.
we learned a lot. I mean, all of my brothers have taken away a lot of things from those early days in the store, not only from my father being in the store, but from my grandparents who were in the store with us during those childhood days.
Right.
And there's still things that we talk about all of these
Hmm.
years later that came from being in the store.
Yeah. Yeah. So you went on to Bates. Tell us a little bit about the choice of going up there and studying rhetoric, from what I understand.
Well, first of all, I chose Bates amongst a grouping of schools that I looked at because it felt a lot like the high school. It was small. It felt like the high
Yeah.
school I went to, and you could ski. So
Key driver.
priorities. I love to downhill ski, and
Yeah.
being in Maine, there was access to some good skiing, and
Right.
I also had a great interview with their then director of admissions. So I liked Bates.
Did you
yeah.
compete on the ski team? I'm sure they
No,
probably
no,
had one.
no,
Okay.
no. It was just amateur,
Yeah.
but I love to ski.
Awesome. And your field of study, tell us about the choices behind
So,
that.
contrary to what it may sound like, the topic of rhetoric is not the art of BS.
How many times have you tried to explain that, right?
Thousands and thousands of times, because you say art rhetoric and people think like a negative kind of thing, and the
Right.
next thing people ask is whether I was on the debate team.
Right, of
and
course.
and I didn't do debate. I wasn't
Right.
on the debate team, and
Yeah.
rhetoric at the time was a pretty small major. It only existed at Bates and in Texas at the University of Texas,
Wow.
and I tell people basically it's the art of persuasion through visual and written communications.
Right, right. And has that helped you through your career?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact,
Sounds like a good foundation for business.
yeah, there was a good foundation that people who were rhetoric majors basically went into business or went into law, and those were the two biggies.
Right.
I can tell you that I have recited things from my studies as a rhetoric major year after year to employees and other people I might be mentoring, and there were several pieces or nuggets of importance from that major that have helped
Right.
me along the way.
Right. Awesome. So you did an internship at LL Bean, and we talked about that when we spoke a couple of months ago. Stayed up in the Maine area for a while. Tell us about kind of the interest there. Was, again, the early retail background attract you to that? Did you just like the outdoor, aspects of what LL Bean had to offer, and your subsequent jobs from there, or what kind of kept you up in that part of the world?
Well, I like the retail aspect of it. I was intrigued with L. Bean. Certainly, they were unique at the time.
Yeah.
And
Great,
to think
great
that I
stuff.
could slip my way in the door there and learn what happened under the covers was attractive to me.
Right. Right. Cool. And did you go to work for them full time, or was it just an internship?
It was basically an internship where
Yeah.
I took a little time off, and then I ended up working for a PR agency
Yeah.
in Portland.
Right. And then got into retail after that, from what I
Yeah,
understand.
at
Was,
that
was that
point-
the family business? Is that
Yeah,
what you
my,
came back
my,
to?
my, my dad was ready to retire,
Yeah.
and he said, "Hey, if you're interested in this, speak now because I'm ready to retire, and the time is now." And so I made the decision, went into the business because it was a lucrative business that had provided a good, a good solid income for my dad all those years.
Right.
And he very, very quickly handed me the reins. Felt very, he was anxious to.
Well, you were his last
get out.
hope. You were the last
That's
son,
right,
right?
that's right.
Did he have the conversation with the three older brothers as well?
Well, my older brother was actually in the business, but he had created 2 stores of his own
Okay,
in
yeah.
New Jersey, and he wasn't
Right.
interested in the original store. So my oldest brother was kind of in the business, but not in the store my dad was in.
Right. Right. So you took it over. You quickly took over the reins. You did that for about 8 years. And
Between 8 and 9 years, and
Yeah.
I had opened 3 stores at that point, and kind of hit that first epiphany in life, or that first fork in the road, where you say to yourself, "Am I going to do this for the rest of my life?
Right,
Do I
right.
see myself doing this?" And while the retail aspects and certainly running the company, having 80 employees, are all very sort of fun to do on the one hand,
Right.
small retail is really, really tough.
Yeah.
It's even tougher today than it was all those years back then. But
How many
even
stores
back
then? Was there just one, or was there multiple?
there were three stores.
Three
I was
stores.
running 3 stores. I was shuttling in between the 3 of them, moving merchandise, and I had a truck that I drove, and I moved
Right.
things around. And I wasn't necessarily looking to get out. In fact, I had a 4th store that I was queuing up at the time when I happened to get a communication from someone from Orvis,
Oh.
and then they were looking for basically a consultant on a very, very short, small gig to help them with their luggage redesign.
Yeah.
And I had done some luggage design as part of an organization that I belonged to for the stores. And I said, this looks like fun.
Yeah.
And I've kind of used that yardstick all along my career. It looked
Right,
like fun. I talked to them. I drove up to Vermont, and I could do it in my sleep what they wanted me to do. And so I did that, and they said, "Wow, you're really good at this. Why don't you do some more?" And so, okay, I did a little bit more.
And you're doing this on the side. You were still running the
running my
luggage shop.
stores.
Yeah.
And I had managers in the stores, so I went up to
Sure.
Vermont, did this on the side. There's no such thing as remote work back then.
Right.
No such thing as Zoom or any of that.
Yep.
And I did another project, and they said, "You're really good at this. You should just come on board and be a product designer." And so, I looked at my wife and said,
decision to make,
yeah, this is the fork in the road.
Right.
And I would be making close to what I was making in the retail stores for work that was a lot physically less demanding and intellectually more demanding.
Yeah. And funner.
And
right?
and
Yeah, a
just
lot
more,
more fun.
just more fun.
Yeah.
And I was tied to a beeper back then with my
Oh, boy.
stores, and so I was working 7 days a week. We had mall stores, so they were open all kinds of hours at Christmas.
For those in the audience who don't know what a beeper is, do you want to explain that, Brad?
Yeah, well, my daughter, who's a surgeon, still carries one. But a beeper is that little box that goes on your belt, and It beeps at you and tells you to call someone
Pager,
for a
right?
message.
The
Yeah, it's
page
a
you.
pager, right? It's a
Pager to find a phone and call someone
That's
with it,
right.
right?
That's right. So I was kind of married to the pager, and I really didn't like it. So I made the decision to take on what they offered. I still had the stores. Actually ran the stores remotely for
You
about
did? Okay.
a year.
Because I was going to ask you about that.
From Vermont. I commuted back from Vermont to New Jersey and back and forth on weekends, and to see how it would go. To sort of try it out and try before
try before you
making
buy.
the big commitment. And finally made the decision to sell the stores.
Wow.
And I closed 2 of them and sold the remaining one. And the folks who I sold to were actually the landlords of the building who also own businesses. And they ran the store for a good 12, 15 years after that. And
how did your dad feel? Was your dad still with us at that time?
Yeah. I mean, he understood. I think he felt a little down about it, but he understood the economics.
Because it was his dad's store,
absolutely,
right? You were the third generation.
He wasn't incredibly sentimental about it. He understood he understood the math. He understood the economics, and he just wanted me to be happy.
Yeah.
So
that's great. So supported you through it.
Yeah.
And then how was that transition? Because, 7, 8 years, that's a long time. You were running your own show, and all of a sudden you had several bosses, I'm sure, up the line. Orvis was how big at the time?
Orvis was probably between $2 and $250 million in sales. And I was all of a sudden sort of an executive. And
right.
It kind of felt fun. And on the one hand, I wasn't responsible for everyone. And
it was kind of a relief in that regard, right?
Kind of a relief, and it was fun to create product. I had a really good time designing product. They had a domestic factory that we worked with in Missouri, of all places.
Wow.
And I had a great time designing the product. And I did that for a while, and then they promoted me, and all of a sudden I was in charge of a section of gift and home and catalog development and product development, and so we were off to the races.
Yeah. And then you kind of went back to some other entrepreneurial things, and then you returned to Orvis, right? You actually came back later, is that correct?
That's right. They kind of called me after I had done quite a bit of web development work and web marketing.
Started in digital, right? I mean,
digital.
What we call digital e-commerce now. I guess we didn't call it that then. But,
yeah, sort of the beginning of the 2000s, and they said, "How would you like to come back? We've got this challenge we're working on, and we think based on what you've done, you know us, and you'd be great at it." And so my wife kind of looked at me sideways, and we moved.
Do you remember the reason why you left? Yeah.
We moved once again, went back to Vermont, built a new house again, and I was there for quite a while longer, but doing something very different and doing digital.
Really helping them get their e-commerce set up, I think.
Yeah, I was head of e-commerce and eventually VP of e-commerce, and it was fun, and I liked working for Orvis. I liked working for the Perkins family, who were the owners.
Fantastic. And then back to some more kind of entrepreneurial things again before coming to Dover, and you've been about 5 years there. So help us kind of understand that path. You had the family, but I mean, it's so. I mean, when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, I said you've got such a great background because here you had this family business. You could have probably run that for many years. You could have passed it on to your children, etc. You chose to go work for corporate. Then you did some entrepreneurial things. Went back to the same corporate, more entrepreneurial. And tell us about that path. Was it just kind of always pursuing new and interesting and fun things to do, or did opportunities just kind of come along and you talked it over with your family and said, hey, let's go give this a try for a while?
I would characterize it as first, everything that I've ever done has been in retail in one form or another, and all started from rolling out of the cradle into the retail business.
Literally, yeah.
And then the progression that you just painted was really more about ever-growing levels of responsibility and something about the higher and higher path. First director, then VP, and then a CEO, and then a president, and then CEO again. And in each one of those cases, I felt like I could add something to the equation, and that's what attracted me. In most cases, a recruiter came and found me, and we thought that It would be great for the family because I'd be making more money.
Right.
And we just kept going along that path. But
Yeah.
it's all been retail, every single job.
Yeah.
And
That's the common thread. Yeah.
after a while, when recruiters would call me because they knew me at this point, and they would call me with something other than retail, I'd say, it sounds interesting, but I'm a retail guy.
Yeah.
That's what I do. And
You like that
and
retail
after all
component.
of this time, it's a retailer that's in my blood.
What do you think makes people successful in retail? If you think about that as a career, retail's, I do a lot of work in my recruiting business in hospitality, in restaurants and hotels, and it just takes a certain brand of person to do that work. You've got to be very customer service focused.
That's
You've
right.
got to love working long hours. You don't mind getting the beeper rung at 2 a.m. if there's an emergency, and you gladly get up with a smile on your face and you'll deal with it. What are kind of the parallels for the retail industry for you, Brad?
Yeah, I can't say that I'm the guy who loves getting the call at 2 in the morning, but I can say that I enjoy the marketing and the product development side of it the most. I've always called myself a merchant, and that encompasses product development as well as the marketing. And even to this day, I love proofing the catalogs. I love going into the stores. I travel to our stores today. And I love spending time in the stores because every little tweak I can make makes the persuasion of what we do more effective to sell stuff. And I think if you boil it down to what I enjoy most, it's seeing the arguments being made, whether it's oral or written or digital, and seeing people bite and seeing people take what we have to offer.
That's the carrot. Huh?
Yeah.
You love that when you see that response.
Yeah, I do. And when I think people who enjoy retail understand that we're here to serve. It's a service business.
Right.
And it's changed. How retail executives have changed over the year. I'm sort of a dying breed at my age of having actually started on the floor and been in retail stores in several different settings in several different companies. There's a lot of kids today who have never had that experience.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
They're doing online retail, and they've never worked in a Macy's.
Never stocked a shelf.
They've never stocked a shelf, and I think that's really too bad. I think I would give advice to people. Look, if you can work in a chain retailer for even a little while, there is benefit to doing so because everything in retail is based on the physical store. Every website is based on the physical store. And I do believe it's important that people get some experience in physical stores.
Yeah. Well, even Amazon's now going back to physical stores. So
That's
go
right.
figure, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So you got involved in digital or e-commerce early as referred to today. Was that an insight that you had? Was there a certain job that you kind of got into? I know that it was post Orvis, if I'm not mistaken, right? When you kind of got into the digital side, or was it pre that? No, it was actually after your first time with Orvis.
Yeah.
And did you have some insights? Did you kind of feel that this was coming, or tell us about that?
Well, it's funny. I've always liked computers, and my senior thesis in college was the IBM Charlie Chaplin commercials.
I remember those.
On the original PC.
That's right.
And so I studied that, and I was interested in the way IBM co-opted Charlie Chaplin to sell a computer, which of course Charlie Chaplin would roll over in his grave if he ever knew that. And so I've always had this interest in computers and pushing buttons and stuff like that.
Right.
And it seemed a natural progression to meld my merchant and product development skills into the digital platform.
Yeah. Were you out ahead of it? Did you got involved fairly early? I mean, you had obviously some experiences there. Did you kind of see or have a feeling at the time that retail would really be quite literally transformed?
Yeah, I did. I mean, this is in like 1999.
Yeah, right.
When I started to get a feel for it, and I remember conversations with my peers at Orvis at the time, thinking, is this going to be a thing or what? And it very quickly started to snowball, although the acceptance within the industry happens more slowly.
Yeah.
And And when someone called for me to go and do digital for them, I jumped because I really saw that
That's
this
the
was the
future.
next thing. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure, I wasn't sure at the time how big it would be or
Right.
what kind
Right.
of transformational thing it would be, but it smelled right.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about kind of how your leadership has changed over the years. Have you seen, particularly with the digital e-commerce impact, has that had an impact on the way that you've managed others and led your organizations in terms of kind of the strategic direction on how you've led these various retailers over the years?
I think I would put it this way, Brent. Over time, I've gained miles on the odometer, and and in the process of doing that, I've learned a lot. And if you look at sort of the first half of my career, even maybe the first 60% of my career, I was learning like crazy. I was doing on-the-job learning.
Yeah.
I was learning how to become a CEO. I was learning how to mentor staff. I was learning about this developing online industry, which nobody was there to teach you about.
Right.
You taught
Right.
yourself. My dad always, before he passed, he would always say to me, "How did you learn how to do this stuff?" And, and he was, of course, incredibly proud, but he never was able to use a computer in his life, but he was always amazed at how I learned how to do this. And I said, "Dad, I've just taught myself based on what I've seen others do."
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
for the first part of my career, it was really about learning. And then I hit a point where I started to feel really more confident about what I knew because it was working. And I felt like I had a lot to share with others. And so now that I'm sort of on this other side of my career, I really lean on what I've learned over the years in other roles in what I do today.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly sharing with my team anecdotes and nuggets and things that I've learned in other places
Right.
to help them along in what we do today.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've been with Dover coming up on 5 years, I guess, about 4.5 years now. You were recruited there, I assume, or
Yes.
was it a family connection?
Yep.
Great. And tell us a little bit about the business. I know, as we mentioned in the bio, it's the largest North American or American saddlery company, and equestrian supplies, I guess,
Equestrian,
is the better sector.
Yeah.
What was the attraction to the company, and what is it about that opportunity
Well,
that
it's kind of funny. They needed a new CEO,
Yeah.
and my family has been equestrian. At that point, we had horses in the backyard for something like 10 or 15 years that my girls were riding. So the fact that they were able to attract a multi-channel retailer who also had equestrian
knew a little
experience,
bit about the business, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a bonus. But they didn't hire me because I had horses in the backyard. They hired me because I had operations and I'm an operator.
Yeah.
And I've kind of, I mentioned I called myself a merchant, and I've morphed now that I'm a CEO for the second or third time, depending on how you count, into an operator. That's what I do best.
Right.
And as an operator, you're doing all kinds of different things, but leveraging the people around you, and it's a team effort. I've got a great team here. They needed someone who could transform the business. It had recently been acquired by private equity, and the person who had ran the business prior to me had left, and there were a lot of changes that need to be made. And so I was attracted by the fact that I felt like I knew what needed to be done. Of course, little did I know there was a lot more than what I thought that needed to be done.
How does that happen?
Yeah, it always seems to happen. But that's part of the challenge, and that's part of what I enjoyed. I enjoyed fixing things. I enjoyed creating value for the ownership, and I enjoyed building a better company for our customers.
Right. How many stores, how many employees, and within the confidentiality of private ownership, can you tell us a little bit more about your scope?
Yeah, we've got 33 stores in the U.S.
National?
Across the country.
Canada as well, Mexico?
Nope, not in Canada, just
US.
all in the U.S., at least at the moment. A very healthy online business.
Wow.
We send catalogs, we still do.
Wow.
We
Yeah.
shoot photography for the catalogs. We send the best looking catalog for equestrian that anyone has ever done.
Great.
Very proud of that. We're sending
Yeah.
another one out in 2 weeks. And we're truly, and sort of the overused word by now, we're truly an omnichannel retailer because we operate in all channels: phone, chat, email, stores. And stores are very important to us. We do a great job in our stores, and our customers want to be in our stores.
You'd never be a complete 100% e-commerce business.
I was more e-commerce in one of my last jobs,
Right.
2 or 3 roles ago,
Right.
and I always felt like I was missing that store component.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But does the consumer or the customer of yours need to have that store component?
I feel that in the current business they do.
Yeah.
Because they need to come into the store, smell the leather,
Yeah.
get fitted for some things that are very, very difficult to fit.
Right.
And they love to schmooze with other people in the store.
Sure. Talking
all
about
of,
it. Yeah.
all of our people, all of our staff in the stores are all riders, or they've been before, or they're rider moms. And our customers love to schmooze with our staff. It's a real reason to come into the store.
I love it. And are the stores and locations where you would typically have, the Newport, Rhode Islands, right? Or the Montecito, Californias? Are you in locations where there typically is a lot of, equestrian activities or not so much? It's major metro markets across the country.
Our stores are in places where we have a significant mass of English equestrian riders. And that's demonstrated by their online business and their catalog business. And we know that there's an opportunity to make a difference.
Wow, fantastic. And more store opportunities? I mean, I would have thought there's probably more than 35 communities where that exists in the U.S.
Yep. We've got a list of areas that we go. We pick them very, very carefully because we have no interest in going in and going out quickly.
Right.
So we do our homework, and then we get the very, very best possible real estate deal we can find.
Yeah. How have you guys done through the pandemic? Has it been tough for you? Has there been, some store closures like some of the retailers have happened, et cetera? Or has it been staying fairly buoyant through this period?
Well, the pandemic has been tough on everyone. There's no two ways about it. And back in March when it all started and people thought the world was going to come to an end, we didn't know what to think either. And so we made some drastic changes, and we eventually ended up with the stores closed for a period of time with our managers in each store doing ship from store. But we actually came out of the pandemic in a very strong place.
Cool.
Funny as it may seem, but due to inventory management and some very, very strong, quick actions that we took during the worst of the closure period, we came out, and we had actually started doing very, very well before the pandemic. A lot of the transformation of the business that we had been working on had all started to come to fruition before the pandemic, and then we just picked up where we left off afterwards. And we've had a very, very strong year afterwards.
Congratulations. Great stuff. Well, I'm sure people literally and figuratively gnawing at the bit, right? Get back out and ride again. Oh, gracious. Now, company culture, the CEO drives that. You've certainly experienced that in multiple companies and your own business as well. How would you kind of describe, Dover's company culture, and more importantly, how do you get that more communicated directly out to the rank and file?
Right. Well, the first thing I've always told people in any place I've worked is, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, go find something else. Life's too short.
Right.
You really have to enjoy your work to really make it meaningful. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't enjoy their work. But to me, if I'm not enjoying it, I got to do something else. The key thing about most of the people in most of the positions is that they really want to be there. Our associates in our stores are there because they're enjoying what they do. They might be able to get paid more down the street someplace else, but they're enjoying. They've got a huge employee purchase benefit.
Yeah, they're riders, so
they're riders. They
get the discount.
They get the discount, but they enjoy being with other riders. They enjoy talking to customers. So basically, it's their passion that they're able to work in. And so, from our store perspective, that really covers them. From our staff perspective, again, many are riders.
Right.
Some aren't, but many are, and they all enjoy what they're doing, whether it's creating product or whether it's doing customer service. They're enjoying what they're doing. They enjoy being with others. If you think about, we have our own warehouse. We've got about 80 people in the warehouse. And again, they could be working in any warehouse that they wanted to be, but they're working in our warehouse because they enjoy being with the people they're with. They like the way they're treated. They're treated fairly, and they enjoy being part of the solution. So if I have to put my finger on it, the one thing I'd say is it's got to be fun or at least enjoyable
Right.
to be a great place to work.
Right. And you enjoy it as well. So you exemplify that with your employees and your staff.
I do enjoy it, and the
Yeah.
moment I stop enjoying it is the moment I'd stop doing it.
Time to move on. What do you do when you're, or really, what do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire? Is it that passion?
Well, I look for someone, first of all, who's honest, who's trustworthy, who's telling it
Yeah.
to me the way it is,
Right.
and who I believe has something to add to the equation, just like I think about myself. Do they have some knowledge, or do they have a skill set where they can add and not subtract?
Right.
And if they are reliable, and they show up, which is a huge part of work these days.
Particularly recently, yes, yeah.
And if they don't continually look at the clock, but understand that
Right.
they're making a contribution, that's somebody I'd like to hire.
Yeah, cool. And any favorite interview questions? I mean, it's so hard in an interview situation, and I'm not talking about maybe people at the retail level. I know you've got managers that do all that, but when you're looking at folks in your C-suite, that cultural, acceptance and that cultural affinity is so important. Are there ways that you kind of get at that? How do you, kind of get, below the surface, so to speak,
Right.
in an interview situation?
Well, there's been, as you know, books and books and books and books and books written on how to do interviews.
Yeah.
And again, I've sort of paid some attention to that in the first half of my career. But at this point, my style, and it isn't necessarily right for everyone, but my style is to just talk, and to talk with someone and get them to let their guard down. I always start an interview with this. This isn't very formal. I'm not a very formal guy. I'm not going to ask
Right.
you all kinds of crazy questions. So this is just a conversation. And I let my staff ask the technical questions. I let my staff make sure that they're right for the role.
Qualifications are there.
What
and everything else.
what I want to know is the kind of person they are, and kind of get under the covers a little bit about what they think, what they do, what they like to do, where do they live, what kind of sports they play. And if you get someone talking and you get them to let their guard down about this is an interview, they will you will typically see either strong flags to the positive or some red flags to the negative.
Yeah.
And I've had a pretty good track record using my gut and using the conversational method to knowing whether somebody will work out or not.
Yeah. That fit with you is so important. Great. Well, Brad, you've been very, very generous with your time, but we always ask one last question of all our guests. And, that's kind of what career and life advice would you give someone who maybe has their eyes on the corner office, maybe they're in a family business or thinking about selling it and going to the corporate world, or, maybe they've just decided this is what they want to do. And, what would you tell someone? And, a lot of our listenership are kind of the late 20s, early 30s, and, they're looking for some career advice and direction. What would you tell them?
Getting experience in a multitude of things is never a bad thing. Making sure you have retail experience, as I've said, is retail experience on the floor is always critical. But mentoring from someone who can teach, mentoring from someone who can share what they've learned. I've mentored many people over the years, and mentoring doesn't have to be anything formal. You just find someone to hitch your wagon to.
Sure. And you've been mentored too, I'm sure, along the way.
I have, and I remember pieces of advice that I've been given over the years by others. But I have several people who work with me today who I worked with at Orvis, who I worked with at Yankee Candle, and they're on my team today because they enjoyed working with me. They felt like they learned something from me, and they also believe in the mission. And if you believe in the mission of what you're doing and you're having fun, that's what counts.
There you go. Well, Brad Wolansky, CEO at Dover Saddlery, thank you so much for sharing your experiences into the corner office.
My pleasure, Brant. Glad to be with you.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.